become an issue, I guess, because it is people, it's neighbors. It's people that have names and who were, born in hospitals, and, something happened in their lives, or a series of things happened to them, and now they're where they are now. And to me, the real heroes, the real people who accomplish things are the homeless themselves, not me. And really, I wouldn't say that. I would say the same thing to any service provider in the room. We all know that to live a day in their shoes would be hell for us. I shudder to think about sleeping on Skid Row for a night, and what kind of courage that would take. The interactions I've had with the homeless over the years, I've always been blown away when somebody who's homeless and dealing with that situation asks me how my day is. Right? Like, you have every kind of reason to not ask me how my life is, and yet you do. And so I think that I'm in this realm of nonprofit work because I get inspired daily by each individual that I meet. Because they're heroes. They're resilient individuals who have a load that they're carrying, and if I can lighten that load a little bit, I will, with whatever we can do. The end game for us is to get people off the streets and provide them with dignity at the same time. I'm glad that the representative from PATH mentioned community, because if I asked the room tonight, if I said, hey, I have a great one-bedroom apartment for you in Palmdale, and you need to move there.
Wow.
How many of you would say, yeah, I'll go. I'll go. It's all paid for. I think most of us go, well, what about my friends? What about my neighborhood? What about this? This is what I'm used to. Well, individuals who are homeless are our neighbors that don't have homes. They have the same needs we have. They have the same community needs that we have. They're used to their neighborhood. And guess what? Beggars can be choosers. Right?
Wait, I hate to bother you, but stay behind the podium.
Okay,
please.
great, thank you. I need to stay here where I'm trying to trip over this.
Yeah, but I can't follow you.
They absolutely can be choosers. It's their life, right? They get to choose. And so I think that dignity says, if we're to do our jobs with dignity, then we have to ask them, what would you like? We have to let them direct a lot of the plan, even if they're dealing with a mental health illness. I met with, we do this thing with Harvard Westlake called Laundry Love. Have you guys heard of Laundry Love?
Yes, we have.
Where we take over a laundromat and we invite the homeless in to come and do their laundry, and then we're turning it into kind of a service kind of time to provide case management and things. And a woman came in last week, and she told me that she had been interviewed by 300 talk shows. She told me that she had some body parts removed because somebody was stealing body parts in Skid Row. She told me that she had a book deal, and this was her world. She wasn't starting from the same place where I was starting. This was her world, and it was very real. Right? And I just kind of lived in her world for a little while. I'm like, wow, tell me about that. What's it like to be interviewed by 300 talk show hosts? That's amazing, right? That's her world. And so what makes housing people and taking them right off the streets into housing difficult? I hang out every other Thursday night with a group of guys who are in AA, and they're just buddies, and we smoke cigars. And one of them last week said, sobriety is really easy. All you have to do is stop drinking. Right? Easier said than done. Right? Ending homelessness is really easy. All you have to do is provide homes. But it's not that easy, right? One of the things that makes it really difficult is, let me just ask you, how many of you would like to have a homeless facility next door to you?
Yes, that's huge. That is a big deal.
Radomir, you're one of very few. A couple, right? We can hardly stand the neighbors next to us, right? The NIMBYism that exists, not in my backyard. I don't want them on the sidewalk, but I don't want a facility in my neighborhood. So where are these 30,000 units going to be built for the homeless?
That's right.
I don't. I don't know. Where I live in Santa Clarita, they say, go down that canyon, and when you hit the last oak tree, take a right, and that's where you can build the homeless shelter.
Behind the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
No, the other side of the hill.
So I think we also have to be careful to not make, when we say that we're going to end homelessness by 2016, let's be real. I mean, honestly, that's a promise that we're making to the chronically homeless. And I think they're sick of promises. In 22 years, I've heard that promise over and over and over and over again. Let's stop making the promise, and let's start saying, we'll reduce it by this much, and this is our plan, and these are our challenges. But let's be very real about how difficult things can be. The speaker before me suggested it takes years sometimes to just develop trust with somebody. Absolutely. It can take a long time. Some people don't want to be housed. I got a call from an affordable housing provider a couple weeks ago who said, one of the ladies that is in he's a developer, she laid out on the train tracks this morning because the pressure of having her own apartment is too great for her, and the social worker doesn't come by often enough to support her. He has another tenant who pitches a tent in the courtyard because he's more comfortable in the tent than he is in the walls of the apartment. And so this is what, I guess, I'm just throwing some things out there to say it's a very difficult issue. It's as easy as saying you'll be sober as long as you stop drinking.
That's right.
And yet, there is progress being made. And I want to commend LA Family Housing for being a huge part of that progress, PATH for being a huge part of that progress, other providers for being a huge part of that progress. As a program, we take a rapid rehousing approach. LA Family Housing is a huge partner in that with us. Last year, we took about 100 people, all homeless families, and rapidly rehoused them. Now, that's a drop in the bucket, but if we're all doing that together, then we can get there. Homeless families are a very unique population to serve for a lot of different reasons. I mean, we have families that come to us where it's a single mom with 8 kids. Undocumented families, how are we going to house those folks, especially if it's a federally funded program and there's not availability for them to be in housing. And so I just want to leave with this. Many years ago, I had a young man who used to pitch a tent in my parking space. I worked in Hollywood with homeless youth, and his name is Jeremy. And Jeremy would pitch his tent in my parking space. And I just had it one day. I mean, first of all, you can't find parking in Hollywood. So I had a parking space and Jeremy took it over. And I got out and I said, Jeremy, get out of my parking space. And he unzipped his tent and he smiled at me. And Jeremy was 15. I met him when he was 14. He said, do you want to know why I pitched my tent in the parking space? I said, I'd love to. He said, I knew Jeremy. Jeremy grew up in foster care. At the age of 11, he was addicted to crack.
Oh, brother.
At the age of 14, he was a street sex worker. And he said, I always dreamed of having a dad who would wake me up in the morning.
I love it. I love it.
So I went, are you kidding me? I'm like, holy crap. I just blew. I'm like, will you give me another chance? Just give me another chance. You can pitch the tent here tomorrow. So I brought him donuts the next day. We hung out in his tent. I saw Jeremy a few weeks ago. Jeremy is now a stay-at-home dad with 2 kids. His wife was the CFO of an insurance company. And I said, and I keep in touch with him. I said, Jeremy, I gave you a lot of chances at a lot of different programs. What changed your life? And he said, it's kind of like a scale. He said, I hadn't had a lot of kindness in my life, but at some point, enough people were kind to me that I started being kind to myself. So, one thing we can all do that's free to change homelessness is to treat our neighbors as we want to be treated.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wade. Very good. Up next, we have Brandon Beckman, the Director of Program Services for the Midnight Mission. Mr. Beckman, you're recognized and have the floor, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. That was exceptional stuff right there. I have been in Health and Human Services for about 15 years now. And I think that one of the common denominators amongst all of us is that there are a lot of great people doing a lot of great work. And we are sharing a lot of the struggles and with resources and some of the with the dynamics behind homelessness, and but that common denominator keeps me in this as well, and the stories that we're all affected by. I got into this because I got clean and sober, actually. So that whole thing about it's easy to stop drinking, that's not true. But what happened was I had a lot of help, and that's what mattered. That's how I got into this. I was a director of People in Progress there for a number of years, and finally went into private practice, and started a couple of small businesses doing consulting and also some private practice counseling. So a few years ago, I was asked by the leadership of the Midnight Mission to go down there and start develop an addiction care program for their guests down there and their clients. So today, the Midnight Mission has a 250-man residential addiction care program that's full range. We take them through the counseling, we get them prepped for jobs, we have a great education center now getting them involved with adult basic ed, GED prep, computer literacy, we have the medical unit, we have transitional living on the 3rd floor for people that complete our program after a year. So we actually have a full continuum now. It's a 12-step model that we use, but we take all the best practices, kind of blend it all together, and I think we do a pretty decent job of helping the chronically homeless out there. But what makes the difference is we're all connected in this industry, and we're all rowing in the same direction, hopeful for the people that are suffering out there. I know it because I was suffering at one point, but when I got into this industry, I got to meet everybody else who was suffering out there too, and had that chance to get better at life and learn how to stay stopped. I'm a Loyola Marymount graduate, and I ended up homeless just about 15 years ago behind poly-drug addiction. So I know firsthand, I also know that there's hope, and so what I've been able to do with the Midnight Mission is kind of blend addiction treatment work with some business management as well, and give them a program that I think works. We have 27 staff members that actually provide treatment there, and we also have a family housing facility over in Inglewood where we have 11 units for families, and that's a year-long program as well. So they get the therapy, we have child counseling, obviously the job readiness, domestic violence work, everything to take mostly women and children out of the shelters and give them a chance to live self-sufficiently. That is our goal at the Midnight Mission. Self-sufficiency is it. You're going to hear more about healthy living in 2015. But we have been blessed with being able to provide some concrete services for the people that are the most institutionalized out there. I agree with Bonnie Roth. I met Bonnie Roth a long time ago. I'm kind of bummed that she left, because I was going to say hi to her, but I agree. She has one of the best outfits in the Valley when it comes down to mental health work. I've always respected the work that they do, and we've done plenty of cross referrals with Bonnie Roth and her agency, and John Horn, who's going to come up here pretty soon. I've known John for a long time as well. Appreciate your work too, John. But we're rowing in the same direction. And what are we looking at next? I've been fortunate to travel a little bit and speak across the country with addiction treatment and other social service strategies. And so recently I was in Atlantic City and then in Philadelphia, and a bunch of us got together, some mental health providers and some addiction treatment professionals. We decided to do an online collaborative. And so in 2015, we're going to roll out this national online collaborative where we're going to start working on managing homelessness by reducing it to a certain level, which is what that gentleman was talking about. He kind of stole my script there for a minute, but I think that's a great idea. I like to be grounded in realism too. To say we're going to end homelessness, I think, is just cheating everybody, to be honest with you. We're not a housing first modality, by the way. We don't take a cent of government money, so we don't have to be housing first. We believe in taking people who are experiencing homelessness, the condition of homelessness, and helping them repair their lives to a point where they can become self-sufficient again and lead their own productive life without being permanently dependent on any type of support. Okay, now some people, we understand, will go down that path, and that's fine. But our hope is that most people can get back into their community and function a lot differently. So anyways, back to the collaborative. What we're going to do is we're going to, across the country, design some strategies and some new initiatives that kind of blend a lot of the best practices across the land, and kind of like homogenizing the ideas from different regions and extract some learning from it, formalize it, and really begin to solve the puzzle behind the condition of homelessness. So that's one of our biggest projects that's on the horizon. We're going to continue to provide our services. We did, unfortunately, serve 1 million meals last year and the year before. Hopefully we'll drive that down. But the reality is there are huge numbers of people out there struggling, and we're doing our part, working with you all to help drive that down and then invest the resources to prevent it for the next generations through job realities, education, and certainly addiction-free living. Because at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that once the addiction develops, the functioning is out the door, and they are destined to become either homeless, jailed, or dead. So that's our that's why we do what we do. I thank everyone for being here. I appreciate all of our partnerships, and that's it for me. I'm too available for questions, but thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brandon. Up next, we have John Horn, the representative from the Los Angeles Family Housing. Mr. Horn, thank you very much, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I appreciate that. And before I talk about what I do and our plan for ending homelessness here and echoing a lot of the statements, I just want to make a connection. Van Nuys, I have a long-term connection to Van Nuys. Born and raised in the San Fernando Valley. But Van Nuys is a special place for me because my grandparents had a farm on the corner of Sepulveda and Van Owen Boulevard. And that's where my father was born, and he lived he's still alive, he's 84, but he lived his entire life until he got married in Van Nuys. And so I spent a lot of my childhood coming to see them and spending time with Van Nuys, and so that's a good thing. So I've been working with the homeless on homeless services since 1993, when I started working at Northeast Valley Health Corporation doing homeless services, case management, and started as the co-chair of the San Fernando Valley Homeless Coalition in 1994, and started working at LA Family Housing in North Hollywood in 1996. And while I appreciate, some of the comments made about, are we ever going to be able to end homelessness? The one thing I can say is that having worked in the homeless services field for as long as I have, we have never had the momentum that we have right now in being able to end homelessness. And that is an exciting thing to see. 20 years ago, when I started working with the homeless, managing the homeless problem was really the name of the game. We made it easier for homeless people to be on the street. We provided food, we provided medical care, we handed out a backpack when they came in, we did blankets. That's what we did. We did not talk about permanent housing. We talked a lot about transitional housing, but we didn't talk about permanent housing, and there was a progression that people had to go through to be able to get into permanent housing. And it was such a progression that nobody ever talked about it. So you would start off by outreach. If you were lucky enough, you got into an